제가 자라온 그 지역이 많이 시골이라서 네, 좀 친구들이랑 오히려 그냥 활동적인 걸 많이 했던 것 같아요. 제가 좀 축구도 많이 했었어가지고 초등학교 때 그냥 축구 교실 같은 게 있었거든요. 저는 당연히 축구를 너무 좋아했었기 때문에 그때 해보겠다고 했었죠. 좀 어릴 때부터 감당하기 좀 힘들었던 것 같아요, 제 스스로가. 일단 정신적이나 육체적으로나 네, 너무 훈련도 너무 고되고 그래서 포기했던 것 같아요. 카토비체로 갈 때 그때 당시 기세가 많이 좀 좋은 편은 아니었어요. 그래가지고 당연히 우승해야겠다는 생각을 계속 가지고 있었는데 결승하기 전에 제가 트로피를 봤거든요. 근데 너무 멋진 거예요, 트로피가. 전투력이 더 불타올라가지고 좀 쉬운 스코어로 우승할 수 있었던 것 같아요.
You know, there's a great quote about class, it always remains, and form, that's what varies. So maybe his form was down, but this guy was a GSL champion.
남들 세레모니 같은 걸 보거나 할 때 두 손으로 막 들고 그렇게 힘들어 막 하면 이게 좀 멋이 떨어지는 것 같아가지고 근데 한 손으로 최대한 스스로 좀 무거웠는데 친구인 영호가 되게 많은 업적을 이뤘잖아요. 우승도 되게 많이 하고 제가 이상하게 1년에 한 번씩 다 우승을 하더라고요. 그래가지고 영호처럼 우승도 많이 하고 싶다는 생각을 많이 했어요. 그 아버님이 좀 살아 생전에 계실 때 좀 학교를 그만두고 하는 거는 좀 아닌 것 같다고 말씀하셔가지고 고등학교는 졸업을 제 입장에서 해야 되는 상황이었기 때문에 네, 졸업은 하고 준비했었어요.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. I hadn't realized that Zest had finished high school, but believe it or not, a lot of pro gamers just cut out super early. Sometimes they take part-time classes while being practice partners, but as they move up in the team and start getting TV appearances, a lot of that has to be cut out.
19살이었죠. 그때 들어가가지고 그때도 많이 스스로 늦었다고 생각해가지고 들어가서 정말 열심히 해야겠다 마음 먹고 들어갔는데 숙소 생활을 하고 얼마 지나지 않아서 그 아버님이 좀 그 병으로 돌아가셨는데 제가 좀 경기하는 모습이나 막 우승하는 모습을 좀 보기 전에 돌아가셔가지고 그때 너무 좀 그런 모습을 많이 보여드리고 싶었는데 네. 그 부분이 되게 좀 한이라고 해야 되나? 좀 많이 남는 것 같아요. 항상 결승에 올라가면 부모님들을 많이 모시잖아요, 그 현장에. 그래가지고 그 결승 올라가고 나서 나 좀 우승하고 직후에 좀 많이 생각나는 거. 지금은 솔직히 생각하면서 가족이 최고인 것 같다는 생각도 많이 들고 응원도 많이 해주고 그런 생각이 많이 들어요.
Certainly a very moving story there from Zest, but he's moments away from playing. I mean, he's played some big matches before, but this can definitely be one of them if he's able to move through to the semi-finals and hopefully the finals tomorrow. Joined on the couch now, we do have In Control, Nathanias, and of course, Rotterdam. Zest has had a kind of colourful career over the years. He's won championships, he's had a big championship every single year. He's here playing in the biggest tournament of the year. He's not in the best of form recently, but he's been in that position before where he's been able to turn things around and still be able to win championships when he's not feeling his best.
Yeah, absolutely. Into Extreme Masters 2015, he came into the tournament, wasn't really all that hot. Round of 16, almost got eliminated. Round of 8, still didn't look like he was going to take it on. And suddenly, semifinals, finals, he turned into a whole nother beast. He really grew into the tournament. I think that's one of the very few times I saw somebody win that did not impress me at all in the early stages and suddenly looked so much better with every single series that went by. And he's going to need that, though, because this is a very, very tough series for him. And once again, like you said, Sean, he's not super hot at the moment. Well, he is physically, but you know, when it comes to playing StarCraft, he peaked very early on in the year. Back then, his PvT godlike. He just refused to lose a game. However, lately, it's not been the same, Zest.
Yeah,
And even changing bodies here, is absolutely phenomenal. No, this is that's stats. But Zest has it's kind of interesting the way we talk about him. Like Artosis has been pretty strongly saying this is one of the guys that threatens to win the whole tournament. And not picking Artosis, but I just don't feel the vibe that there's a lot of other people that believe that. They're kind of like each round they're like, he's got a very good shot of advancing here, but no one's being like, Beyond, look out for Zest, or Dark, wow, that Zest is going to be a really tough matchup. It feels like he is one of the third or fourth favorites in this tournament, which is kind of a weird way to talk about him. Even in our analysis, we're like, yeah, this year hasn't been that great, you know, even though it's mostly because we stack it up to previous Zest stats where he was unbeatable and winning major championships and doing it all with six-pack abs.
Well, I mean, he still looks good in camera no matter what he does. I mean, look at this. He's a handsome devil, no doubt. Kevin, I think, if I'm not mistaken, perhaps your favorite Protoss of all time is Rain.
Yep.
But Zest up there?
But still, Zest is up there. No, absolutely. Zest is one of the guys that has just been so fun to watch for such a long time. And like Jeff said, in the beginning of the year, this guy was unstoppable when he turns it on. Like, what I really would love to see is just both him and Beyond turning it on, and then that they actually have the absolute best possible best of 5, because then it would be sick. Then it really feels like one of the gods have to fall. But the problem with Zest is that he's not always that godlike. But this is really a moment where he's going to have to start being godlike because there's a lot of money on the line.
Yeah, and the player he's going up against here, Stats, a player that, you know, he's definitely considered a top-tier player, Nate, no doubt. But is he considered a player who's taking that championship? That doesn't it doesn't add together very well.
It's just crazy when you consider all of the stories that each player brings to the table coming to compete here at this championship, because you have the obvious, right? Everybody wants to get behind some of the less seen players, that are the non-Korean guys. Neve had a big story. Dark still has a huge story moving forward. And then Bjarne's had one of the greatest coming up. But Stats, we know he's good. We know he's been a monster in all the tournaments that he's competed in. But he hasn't even had like that flair that like a guy like Zest has. Even though we're not talking about Zest as much as we should, Stats might be getting the least attention as far as non-gameplay related things.
And is that because he hasn't won that championship in the past? Because we all look at him and he says, oh, he's good, but he's not a winning player.
It's hard for Koreans. They play in the most ravenous, difficult atmosphere in terms of player base. Distinguishing yourself in that area is especially hard. You've had characters like MC in the past, and if you do stuff like that, sure, we can kind of start to rally behind you. But Stats is just trying to play StarCraft real good, guys. And by the way, he has. He was he was the highest rated player in Pro League, and is one of the most distinguished Korean players without that championship. So it's kind of funny that he's here, and at each matchup we're like, yeah, you know, Stats is really good, but that's all we say. There's no victim here. It's just Stats plays and wants you to talk about his play. And when you talk about his play, it's crisp, it's good builds, it's well executed. He's a super solid player.
In a way, it's not too different to what SOS was in 2013 before he won his first BlizzCon, because SOS was also that high-performing Protoss in Pro League with a couple of really good builds, sick execution. The diehard fans were like, yeah, that's my boy, and everybody else was like, yeah, SOS, you know, like, we're here for Jaedong, you know, nobody was here for SOS. So in that way, maybe, you know, Stats' story is a little bit similar to what SOS was once upon a time. Now, obviously, we know SOS is that big-time champion, while Stats, I mean, he did have the cross finals, but it's not the same, you know?
Yeah, not quite the same. But how do you think these are going to mash up then together here, Kev? I mean, I know you know your Protoss versus Protoss very well. Zest versus Stats.
I think it's going to be not obviously old school explosive super short games, but I do think this is going to be incredibly micro focused, and not necessarily when I say like disrupt the Blink Stalker is the way we see a lot of the high level foreign PvPs play out. I think this is going to be, I'm going to attack you, you're going to attack me. It's going to be very sharp timing attacks, probably a couple of Stargates mixed into play as well, and I think we're going to see above all, a lot of variety from both sides in almost every single game, just to make it incredibly hard for each other to figure out what their opponent is doing. That's what I'm expecting of this series.
What do you think, Nate? It's close, not close?
It's cool to see that, and I like that you bring that up too, because we've also seen the way that Zest can adjust the style. We talk about the series he had against Neeb. If he needs to be extremely aggressive, he can be. He's not known for being a cheeser, so having that ability to bust that out can give you the edge like we saw Bjorn have and get inside the head of TY. So his stats plays too standard, too straight up. It could come back to bite him. I don't claim to be the PvP expert here, but having that range is something that always has a big lead when you're playing on a stage like this.
Zest was interviewed in his match before Neeb and asked, you lost Neeb earlier, what did you do differently? And he said he kind of went to work on PvP, and one of the things we saw in that series was he was able to go toe-to-toe with Neeb in those Disruptor Wars. And I agree with Kevin, likely in a PvP between two Koreans, you're going to see kind of a moving away of that style, but my wish list for this match is Zest says, you know what? That's pretty darn good, and it worked really well. I'm going to revisit that idea, because it's exciting for us fans, but it's also perhaps a good way to get a leg up on stats here.
Do you believe the series will be close?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see any reason why this should not be close, especially with the way that PvP can play out as well. If you catch your opponent off guard, even to a depth shade in, pick up a couple workers, Oracle follow-up, then you put yourself in a good position. And yes, the Disruptor is the ultimate comeback unit, but these are two Protosses that, if they feel they're ahead, they don't get more ahead. No, they'll kill you, So in that way, I really think that this series is the first one today that I think really will go to Game 5 and should go to distance.
I don't want to look too far ahead of ourselves, because I know this series is just upon us, but who do you think actually has a better chance against Bjorn?
Ooh,
if you would have asked me this 7 months ago, it's obviously Zest. But right now, I'm not sure if I can. Yeah,
it's kind of a question of which one of them can adapt better. I feel like we saw Deer play the quintessential this is Korean meta PvT, and it just got dismantled. It got picked apart. At no time was Bjorn behind in that series, and it made for a kind of bad match. I feel like Zest feels like he's got that ability to be more adaptable. Obviously, stats currently I feel like is the more well-rounded Protoss, but whether or not that means he can put a better fight against one of the absolute best Terrans and beyond, I don't know.
I don't think either of them is really thinking about that, though, even though that's obviously a super big series for so much money. When you play a PvP and they both know that this is going to be close. However, I do really believe that Zest is probably confident enough, looks at this series and well, this is finally my moment, You've won enough. You win a big tournament every single year. You even won the GSL this year. There's no reason for Stats not to believe that he cannot take out the Zest in the way that Zest has been playing lately. Even when it's been good, it hasn't been godlike.
We don't even talk about this much, but it's guys, this is for $15,000 more. They've already secured $15,000, but the winner of this gets $30,000. That's most championships throughout the year are that much for the finals. It's incredible what they're playing for.
And it jumps up crazy tomorrow. We'll have a lot of fun with that. Predictions then, Kev. Let's start with you.
3-2 in favor of Stats.
I like Zest's X Factor. I'm going to give him 3-1.
I agree. I'm hoping. I don't even know if it's a prediction as so much as a wish. I want it 3-2, and I think Zest as well.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's get ready for this one. It's coming up just around the corner. It's time for the fourth and final quarterfinal.
Heroes of the Storm. Prepare for Heroes Brawl, the new game mode that breaks all the rules. Rated T13.
The 2016 World Championship Series Global Finals is brought to you by Intel, T-Mobile, NVIDIA, and Republic of Gamers.
Three of our top 4 players are finalized here at the WCS Global Finals, and now Björn awaits in the semifinal to see who he'll be facing next. Our first player in our last quarterfinal match of the day absolutely dominated in the first half of 2016, and here he wants to show that he's still in top form at the WCS Global Finals. Facing him is a longtime teammate who wants to steal that spotlight and show that his consistency can result in a win here. Everyone, please give it up for the players for our last match of the day. It is Zest and Stats.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals. We are Tastosis, and this is Stats versus Zest.
This is an epic match indeed. Tasteless, the best Protoss in the world, going up against a teammate of years where he has just outshined him the entire time, but can Stats break that mold and actually beat Stats here where it really matters?
It's going to be interesting. Zest, you know, he's been so dominant, he's so scary, but Stats is on the rise. I think as of late, a lot of people would agree that Stats is looking perhaps stronger than Zest. What do you think?
Well, I think he certainly does look strong, yes, but I can't count Zest down against anyone in the world right now, really. He has been so fantastic this year, and really, you know, all the Protosses on KT rose up over the year, and that's because Zest was the best Protoss in the world. Stats has learned a lot from him, but I think that the Master still has a lot to teach the student.
Very true. These guys have had a long history together. They played a lot of games, a lot of information on these two players that they have on each other. So through this best of 5, we're going to see how they're going to be adapting, what kind of strategies they're going to open up with to perhaps mask builds they might be using later on, perhaps rushes as well coming into play.
You know, we saw them both play some PvPs before in that round of 16. It felt to me like both of them were really top-notch in the matchup, which makes sense because Zest had to practice for it, Stats being a close friend, an old-time teammate. Of course they would practice together, so they should know each other inside and out.
It looks like our game is ready, so let's make some noise. Let's get hype. This is game number 1 with Stats versus Zest. There's no turning back now. The winner of this best of 5 is one step closer to becoming the victor of the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals. And now that we are in game, introducing our players. Over here in the bottom left, in the blue, make some noise for Zest! And his opponent here in the bottom right, in the red, make some noise for Stats!
You guys at home and here at BlizzCon are in for a treat because you're about to see the highest level that PvP can reach. Zest already taking down Neeb, the Protoss versus Protoss Wonder Kid, and has advanced here to take on his former teammate, someone who has actually beaten him before.
That's right. Whatever the best PvP build these guys have, we're going to see it right here, right now. Now, before we go further into this game, we want to talk a little bit about the map here, because this map is a little bit different than your ordinary map. there is a small bridge at the lower center that connects the two secondary bases to each other. Now that's really quick access to your opponent, but if you get to the other end of the bridge, you can usually lock things out very easily. If the game goes on further, we'll see players expanding up towards the north, and eventually we're going to have a lot of action at the top center with maybe some counterattacks down on that lower bridge.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of long Protoss versus Protoss games here, which end up getting into things like Tempest Tech.
Right.
And that's where it gets really crazy. An area we haven't seen as much from these two, but I'm sure they're going to do just fine with it. Now, taking a look at these builds, looks like, you know, Stats has gotten a nice quick Nexus here, whereas Zest instead has gone for a couple of Adepts into a couple Stalkers. Kind of a little bit of pressure he can put on, but Stats definitely has a nice economy-based opening.
See the Adept shading forward now. That Stalker's going to have to go back and try to defend. So there's going to be a little bit of pressure from Zest. Now, if Zest doesn't do that much damage and Stats gets his expansion up and running, then obviously we're going to see Stats in the lead. But of course, in a moment like this, Zest can definitely punish his opponent.
All right, he's trying to poke in, get something done, but with the Mothership Core and a Stalker pushing back those Adepts, you know, he doesn't really get that much. There is a Mothership Core in the main base for Zest, trying to pick off some probes, and in fact, we'll get 3. Oh,
very close, manages to get that out there. So taking out 3 probes, not bad for the start. Of course, the Mothership Core is bruised, but kind of inconsequential as the game goes on further. Usually that's going to be kept somewhere safe.
Certainly you are right about that, but I gotta say, Stats has played this very cleanly so far, blocking off his ramp so that Adepts can't get in, blocking all the harassment quite well. And he does have a slight worker lead here with the Nexus not even done. So that means, as far as economy goes at least, he has that advantage.
That's right. We now see the Twilight Council coming down here, being made right now for Stats. Meanwhile, over here for Zest, he's already getting Blink. That's going to be a big factor coming in here. If you have Blink versus non-Blink Stalkers, obviously those Blink Stalkers are always going to be favored. That's great for offense, but also for defense as well, trying to shut down Warp Prisms and such.
Yeah, and this is part of what Zest's build really can do. Because he had the early units to try to put on some pressure, he knows that Stats has to play a little bit more carefully. He probably has to get the robotics facility. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So the fact that Zest gets to go right into Blink and a very fast third base means that he can catch up here.
Yeah, and that's just the power of having, for instance, that early Blink there. The fact that there's a threat and Stats is a little bit more in the dark makes it a little bit trickier for how he's going to play from here on out. So Zest not only teching up, but yeah, getting that expansion as well. Meanwhile, Stats back at home is getting more of your kind of core army up here. He's upgrading his Adepts, he's getting Immortals, and of course, it's very important to keep track of how many Immortals does each player have, because the Immortals increment out of the Robo Bay one by one. So if you see somebody lose, let's say, 3 or 4 Immortals, it's going to be pretty disastrous. It basically resets how technical their army really is.
Yeah, and you know what? Zest just flew in with a Hallucinated Oracle. He saw exactly what Stats is up to, and seeing those gateways, seeing the fact that he's making an Immortal and getting an upgrade in that Twilight Council, he's going to know that this is an Adept. It's kind of an all-in. It's definitely at least a lot of pressure. So Zest, looking at this right now, I think he's going to have to abandon that third Nexus.
I think you're right, Artosis. There's no way he should be able to hold this. Stats went a very safe route. Was ready for anything that could come at him, and once he scouted his opponent and identified what was going on, now he's going to be able to push across the map. So maybe Zest being a little bit greedy, but I think you're right. He'll just have to sack the Nexus.
And that makes it so that Stats kind of gets right back into it, right? Like, Stats went for a fast expansion and held everything beautifully, so he got ahead. So Zest said, okay, let me get Blink and take a third base so I can get right ahead. But now this counter build to that will force him back. Notice he only has 1 probe at that third base. He's poking out here, trying to keep everything back, utilizing that Blink, but this is a very strong army being warped in by Stats.
Stats has to decide, does he take out the third or does he go for the jugular and push into the second? Zest now backing up. The Adepts are shading in. He's going to be able to get onto the ramp. Will he finish the shade? No, a cancel. Now backing up, deciding perhaps it's safer to maybe go up to the third or maybe even try to warp in more units and push again.
A great block so far here. Some good force fields going down there by Zest. Some fantastic defense going down. By the way, Stats doesn't even even know about this third Nexus yet, so he's just trying to break in here. And if he can't do it, he's going to be in a lot of trouble against a third Nexus from Zest.
I love that Zest is using his own shade to block the shades of Stats from going into the main and getting any further intel. It does look like Stats wants to push in a little bit further here. We just see both of the Immortals are well placed in the back, not taking too much damage. Stats continuing to warp in.
He has a lot of adepts here trying to force his way into that main base, but Zest continues to keep him back, building upon this army. Some great defense with those overcharges as well, and Stats is just not really making headway.
Yeah, if Stats doesn't break him and break him soon, he's going to get further and further behind in this game. It looks like, once again, a great block off there at the ramp by Zest. It seems like Zest is holding, and if we can do a vision check, I think you're right, Artosis. I don't believe he knows about this Nexus up here. Yeah.
He
just doesn't know.
He just has no idea. He's trying to get some damage in here, but Zest has blocked everything. He has a finished third Nexus. What is Stats' plan? Oh, he tries to get a drop into the main base, but Zest does deflect it. The defense of Zest is out of control.
Look, I gotta say, the fact that Stats didn't break Zest there, that's okay. But the fact that he didn't realize that there was a third base that he could have gotten for free is pretty bad. And now Zest can start farming all those minerals from that, and he's gonna have a much bigger, scarier army as this game progresses.
With Stats not even checking that, if he loses this game and takes a look at what happened, he's really going to kick himself, because he could have easily just right-clicked up there, walked up, killed the Nexus in a matter of seconds, and continued what he was doing, which was a pressure that didn't work.
It looks like Zest is now pushing out. He wants to threaten the potential third base. The War Prism may be flying over this army. He has to back that up, regroup over here. Does he have enough to take on Stats? It looks like the army size somewhat even right now.
Yeah, it's pretty close. They'll both cancel these shades. Zest trying to poke in, see if he can hit this third, but Stats definitely has enough. He should be able to hold on to here for now. In fact, sends out his shades to get on top of everything. No, it looks like he's going to back up, cancel this off, and you know what? It makes sense, because Stats is getting into Disruptor tech, which will really swing these battles for him.
We've got an attack coming up here now. Great force fields placed down there, making an escape impossible for Stats right now. Disruptors come out. A good connection over there. However, it seems like Zest may have a healthier spread here, causing a lot of problems here for Stats.
In fact, Shade's up over here. He's trying to decide where to let this Shade finish. It does let it finish and continues to pound on this army of Stats. Stats having to micro backwards, utilizing this War Prism as best he can. Zest starts to pull back, though, as that Disruptor is going to have another shot ready.
He's going to try to come back in here. So many of these units bruised right now, but the two Immortals still in the game. Of course, with the War Prism, you can keep juggling the Immortals throughout the fight, making it a lot more difficult to take them out. And of course, that's a lot more damage that's being dealt to you as that's happening. It does seem that Stats wants to go back, but remember, Stats has been on 3 bases for a long time. Zest has been on 3 bases for a long time. Stats is still on 2.
Yeah, that's a little bit rough. He hasn't really been able to get a third Nexus up, doesn't have any probes over there mining, whereas Zest has that better economy. But Disruptors make a big difference in Protoss versus Protoss, especially against things like Adepts. You just can't dodge those hits, and they do so much damage.
Stats now finally taking a third base. Good job there by Zest taking out the Observer. It does seem that Zest wants to rotate this Warp Prism around here, maybe try to take out these workers over at the second base, or maybe even warp in and try to get this Nexus. We'll see. We do have Stats moving out on the left side of the map. It looks like we have a Shades passing the army right now.
Oh, great move by Zest here. Shading on top of so many sentries, a bunch of free kills, and dropping in the natural at the same time. Some really quality harassment coming out of Zest. That means that Stats attack basically has to win from here.
It looks like actually Stats is going to go and just try to go all in over here on the base. Meanwhile, Zest pushing down to the bottom right. We're in a base trade scenario right here.
Zest shades into the natural. A ton of damage being done. In the meantime, Stats doing the same to him on the other side. The probes being evacuated. That's very important in these base trades. If you don't have any probes out on the map, you can't build any more buildings.
Also remember, there are islands on this map. So if you're able to take an island and your opponent can't get anything over to that, that would automatically be checkmate here. We see the Adepts continue to do damage right now. If we could check, are there any other probes out on the map? Is there anywhere anybody can hide a pylon? Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it looks like Zest. He's the one that's really gotten quite a few away here. He's trying to still kill off all these probes in the main base. He's going to want to get the Nexus as well. Once you end up killing all those buildings, you will end up winning. But Stats is coming back to try to defend what he has left.
Here comes Stats now trying to clean this up. Now we can have a fight over here on the ramp, but the Disruptor is going to make it very difficult. Good shot. He does take down one Disruptor. But for the time being, it's going to be up to Zest to try to hold that ramp. Meanwhile, back over at Zest base, it's basically untouched. The action is stopped as Stats has returned home.
He's just got his main base left over there, but he's not really mining, so Stats needs to clean this up and then go back and finish him off. The Disruptor really is the key here. He needs to get a great shot off with it.
He's going to try to come up here now. Stats is shoving up the ramp. We need to see that Disruptor use. Targeting the Disruptor, a good pickup as he micros that back.
Oh, Stats with so many units here. Throws up that Disruptor shot and actually whiffs everything, but still his army is a little bit stronger than Zest. Zest is eventually going to have to get out of here, trying to target down this Nexus, and it looks like he will get it. That is a big kill.
He needs to escape with his Warp Prism. Going over to the bottom left side of the map. The rest of the units will have to be sacrificed. No Nexus here for Stats. Back over at Zest's home, he does have a Nexus, but not much to do with it.
No, he has almost nothing left over here. Stats, he can't mine anymore. He can't build a Nexus. He must win with what he has. And I gotta say, I think that's not gonna be too hard when he has 44 army supply against 13.
Zest is going to try to pick up and possibly go to the island here.
You know what?
Are there any probes out here on the map?
Zest actually doesn't have enough minerals to even make a pylon at the moment, but if he could get something like that done, that would be, oh my God, he just unloaded through the barrier. I've literally never seen that, and I play StarCraft every day.
Yeah, he's able to pick him up right through there. It looks like the island is no longer going to be an option here for Zest. And I think from here, all Stats has to do is very carefully and gradually push up here, and he will break Zest in game number 1.
I think you are right about that. Zest still trying to figure out if he can get something done. He has a worker out on the map, but that doesn't matter because he has no money to actually build anything, not even an assimilator at this point. So that's just kind of a useless unit at the moment. And in walks Stats, trying to take down everything. And it just doesn't seem like there's any chance here for Zest.
Yeah, I think that should be game. I think right now Zest is trying to process this. He is going around, actually, to the other side of the map with that Warp Prism.
Okay, he's got a probe.
Now, he only has 65 minerals, so I don't know what on earth he could do with that.
Yeah, he leaves his probe there. You don't gain minerals in any way other than mining, so this could be a little bit difficult. He's targeting down some buildings.
Let's also point out here that actually, I think there's less structures overall for Stats.
That is true.
There's actually less. So, you know, with the Immortal, the Stalker, and the Adept, he can take out these buildings pretty quickly.
Yeah, Immortals deal massive amounts of damage, but Stats' army is so much bigger. He's just kind of going across the map to try to clear everything out. Zest is being revealed now, so Stats knows where every single building remains.
He's going to try to clear this up, but of course Stats will just continue to rotate back around to the bottom right side of the map. And I think this should be the beginning of the end.
I think it might be the end of the end here, Taste. There's not a lot more play for Zest to do. I mean, he's trying to be as sneaky and clever as he can to pull something out of his hat, but I mean,
there's just not much else he can do.
If Stats were to just split his army into 2 random pieces, he wins.
I think he's afraid that if the Warp Prism and the Immortal are controlled really, really well, that he might end up losing more than he wants to lose over here. But
and he doesn't know how many minerals Zest has.
That's true.
For instance, like if Zest wants to just kind of make a building at the last second, that could be how Stats would end up losing the game, right? Like if he can't unload, if he loses the prism to that one stalker somehow.
I love what you're saying with that because, yeah, he's masking it pretty effectively. If Stats loses too many units and he makes that, and then Zest makes that pylon on the island, then that's a loss. So right now, Zest is trying to disguise, a possible advantage that he has, even though it's actually not. It's not really there. So I think from here we should just see Stats very cautiously move across the map here, going for this Immortal right now, and that's going to be it. GG.
All right. Very well played on both sides there. Quite impressed by Stats and his decision-making there. Eventually, at the end, he was able to close it out. The Disruptors definitely being a big part of this, forcing Zest into an uncomfortable position.
I love how Stats played that back there. He really was not in a great position for a big chunk of that game, but ultimately, he managed to get that solid push in there. And I thought the base trade was a little bit odd at some points in time. I thought Zest could have played a little bit safer, but
it felt like
just was too solid, I guess.
Yeah, when he got those disruptors, Zest just didn't want to fight army versus army, because if one disruptor hit, nails your army, you are actually just going to lose that game. So he decides that he can base trade a little bit faster, a little bit better. And man, it almost worked out for him, but stats showing why everyone's saying this guy is so solid, this guy is a threat to win BlizzCon.
Let's not forget, he didn't see that third Nexus initially. He could have actually gone up there and taken that, and Zest would have been in an even worse position. So really impressive stuff there by Stats. I'm curious to see what Zest is going to do in game number 2 now to try to adapt to this, because Zest's build in game 1, he did go for the blink right away. He did get that third Nexus, which is maybe biting off a little bit more than he could chew, but if he managed to pull that off, he would have had a huge lead.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, he's playing very Neeb-esque, if I could say so. You know, that's kind of the metagame that Neeb brought around to Korea when he won the Kespa Cup. Go for that very quick blink. Definitely take your Nexuses when you can.
It's going to be interesting, man. Right now, if you're just now joining us, this is a best of 5, a 1-0 lead here for Stats. Guys, let's make some noise. Let's get hyped. We are going into game number 2. Stats versus Zest at the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals. Down in the bottom left in the blue. He needs to begin to turn this series around. Make some noise for Zest! And his opponent here in the upper right in the red. Give it up for Stats!
These two looking very evenly matched in that first game. Really couldn't have been closer, both taking the advantage, both making fantastic strategic moves to try to get ahead of each other. At the end of the day, Stats is victorious, but after that first game, I feel more than ever that this should go to game number 5.
I think you're right. I mean, PvP, it's a really interesting matchup in the sense that there's so many different ways you can approach it. I think in Legacy of the Void, it's made Protoss versus Protoss more technical than it's ever really been before. And in a best of 5, it's all about adapting to your opponent, seeing what ticks they have in their play style. Do they favor a certain tech route? Are they weak in a certain part of the game? And trying to exploit that. So I think we'll probably see Zest be a little bit less greedy, and we also now see... All right,
that's a quick proxy pylon.
That parlayed right into what I was talking about. Yeah. So he's not going to be greedy this game. He is, in fact, making a proxy pylon. So we're going to see some aggression here from Zest.
Yeah, this is really interesting that he's gone for the proxy pylon this quickly. You know, if Stats just scouts, you immediately know that the pylon is missing. So, you know, the thing is, I guess that's working out for him is that Stats hasn't scouted yet, and he can very quickly throw down his proxy, which is, in fact, going to be a Twilight Council.
Whoa.
I think this is just going to be really fast Dark Templars.
I think you are right, Artosis. Now, this is a little bit risky. As we all know, if you play super safe and defensive, you're fine against Dark Templars. But if in any way Stats is not ready and prepared, you can lose so much and really not have any control over the situation. You're essentially punished.
Yeah, and... The build that Stats has chosen here, he's going for a Stargate. Yeah, he'll get an Oracle and that can detect technically, but if you spread your Dark Templars out well, it's not really the greatest detection that you can have. You really are looking for an Observer in this type of position.
That's right. Well, in this proximity, I believe we have something headed up over here. Okay, 2 Adepts, excuse me, coming over here into the main. Zest trying to apply pressure. Now, this is masking in reality. He's trying to make it look like he actually is going to be very aggressive with some kind of attacking units like Adepts, and now he's sending Stalkers across the map because he wants Stats to focus on attacking units to defend this, you know, these first units that come at him, when in fact it's going to be cloaked units that can insta-win the game if Stats is not prepared.
Yeah, if he's not completely prepared for this, if his Oracle is across the map and he hasn't started a second one, the Dark Templars could just end the game and bam, there we are, tied up 1-1. So this is, I mean, it's a gambit by Zest, but it definitely could pay off here. Now Zest pushing forward, shading towards this main base. The Oracle leaves. That is a really big deal.
Yeah, right now Stats thinking that if he sends his Oracle out and gets some kills over here in the bottom left base of Zest, that he can get a lead. But in fact, the Dark Shrine, rather, almost finished.
Ooh.
I don't know if Stats is going to be prepared.
I don't think so. This Oracle is so far away. Does he have good defense against the Oracle in his main base? So that kills probes very quickly. Yep, he does have a pylon. He does have a mothership core, so he can chase it away at least for a little bit here.
The 2 DTs coming up right now. It does not appear that Stats is ready. And he should be going, oh, he's gonna have a block here. He cannot get quite to the probes just yet, but taking out these attacking units is good as well, and that's gonna be it. GG! A risk taken by Stats, or rather Zest turns out to get a reward in return.
It certainly does, and that is exactly what we were talking about. If you don't have detection ready when those fast Dark Templars get there, you're probably just dead. There's no sense in Stats trying to stay in that game. Those DTs would have killed him.
You know, it wasn't just the choice of the strategy, it was the execution as well. He really put a lot of pressure on with a small number of units that made Stats feel like he had to go in and counterattack to take out workers. It did not look like a DT rush on the surface, and that's why it worked. Had Stats identified early on what Zest was doing, he would have simply stayed back and defended, and the game would have gone on. But Zest just did too much of a good job.
He did.
Pulled it off.
He did, and it was a gamble, but it was also based upon knowing his opponent so well. These guys have lived together in the past. They have practiced so much together, and in fact, even played matches against each other.
That's right.
So knowing each other's styles inside and out, Zest somehow felt, you know what, he's not going to probe scout me quickly on this 2-player map. This isn't what Stats is known for. So without Stats getting up there and seeing a missing pylon, he just had no idea what Zest was up to.
Yeah, he had no idea what was coming at him. And we're going to have to see what Stats will do to adjust from that. Now, I don't believe we're going to see Zest do the same strategy again in this best of 5, but sometimes it gets so weird where you actually want to do like the least logical build because it's unpredictable and it's not supposed to work, and then it ends up working anyways because they just factor it out and don't try to defend against it a second time.
We definitely could see something like that, but I do agree with your sentiment that I think Zest is going to put that away for now, try something else. Our next map going to be King Sejong Station. Definitely plays a bit differently than Galactic Process as well.
That's right. If you're just now joining us, it is tied up 1-1. Stats versus Zest. Again, the winner of this best of 5 is one step closer to becoming the 2016 champion of the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals. Introducing our players in the bottom right, in the blue, make some noise for Zest! And his opponent here in the upper left, in the red, give it up for Stats!
This map number 3, so important for Stats. If he wants to come out from the shadow of Zest, this is truly the time to do it. This is the time to get that BlizzCon top 4 and knock down the best Protoss of 2016.
Okay, well, this is a map we've seen a lot of, Artosis. I'm curious to see when everything is on the line. This is the most important game of their entire life. It's all coming down to this. What are they going to do? We've seen every kind of strategy on this map. We know these guys are very versatile players. They can cheese, they can do macro, they can do weird alternative strats as well. What do you expect? Well, it's getting answered for us right here.
Indeed it is. I expect Zest to do a proxy again, Tasteless. And by the looks of this is probably a Stargate proxy, but It could be a Robo, it could be a Twilight. A little bit less likely. It's a great area, though, to put down a pylon so that your Oracle can fly in so quickly.
So, guys, the general rule would be that you don't proxy twice in a row in a best of 5 because, you know, it's the concept of downloading your opponent. If you play against somebody enough times, you start to figure out the patterns and the strengths and weaknesses of them. And to do a proxy a second time in a row is very risky because if they're hypervigilant and they scout it, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But because this is so unconventional, this might actually just end up working here for Zest. It might completely throw stats off as Zest basically avoids playing a traditional PvP in the early game until perhaps the last game where he hopes to win.
And just to play off your point here, Tasteless, there is a probe out in the map walking around everywhere looking for a proxy structure, something out on the map that Zest is trying to hide. But he just looked on the wrong side.
Yeah.
This is a case of bad luck for Stats. He just chose the wrong area to look for exactly what Zest is doing here.
It looks like Stats is heading now down to the bottom right. Unbeknownst to him, there is a proxied Oracle about to come out here. Stats putting the pressure on, but if these Stalkers are out here, they are obviously not back at home, able to defend against this Oracle that is moments away from unleashing havoc over here in the main of Stats.
This could do a lot of damage indeed. Now, Stats, he's making a sentry at home. A lot of the Stalkers are out on the map, so that is a bunch of his anti-air gone. The Mothership Core is in the main base, so that's going to offer at least some protection against the Oracle.
Here comes the Oracle now. He needs to stay out of range of those pylons, and that's a really good position. He can actually just hold that there. He's not killing probes, but he's also, his opponent's not mining either.
Yeah, it's quite nice. See, normally you will have a pylon in the back there to prevent something like this, but that is causing a big drop in income for Stats, as we just saw in that graph. And wow, the Oracle makes it out.
So is that just going to be stuck up in the upper left the whole game? Is that what we're going to have here?
Maybe.
Yeah, now even if it's stuck up there and can't leave for a little bit, assuming that Zest tries to pin it down there, it is a problem, right? It's always going to be a threat if you don't monitor that. That can come back in there later on. Now, back over at Stats' at second base, he's got this up and running. He's getting more probes to transfer over here. Zest is getting a later Nexus, but it looks like he may try to put a little bit more aggression on here.
Yeah, he had some Stalkers to try to pressure the front at least. You know, if there's some Stalkers in the main base trying to block that Oracle from coming back in, you might have a unit advantage. Warping in a couple more Stalkers as well. Even if he gets up and just kills a unit or two, that's still a very valuable play here for Zest.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Artosis. It looks like we have Stats just a little bit ahead in workers, but first and foremost, Zest is going to do, it looks like a big attack over here up at the front. Is Stats going to be ready? He's coming in now.
8 Stalkers, that is a very powerful amount indeed. Great force fields come down and trap one of the Stalkers, so that will be killed off immediately, but still, this is a strong Stalker army poking into the front, and the Oracle coming around as well.
It looks to me like Stats is going to hold this, and this is problematic. And don't forget, that proxied Stargate's still out there. That can eventually be taken out. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for Zest for the rest of this game.
It could be indeed. That's a little bit rough, not getting as much damage as he wants, but let's not forget, he still has an Oracle, trying to fly around, getting any kills that it possibly can. It's only killed 3 probes so far this game, but at least Zest has the initiative here. He's keeping Stats back in his base defensively, which means no damage is being done to Zest.
That's right. Now, there are Immortals beginning to be cranked out here over on the side of Stats, and that's going to be critical as we get into the mid-game here of this Protoss versus Protoss. The Immortals so strong against the opposing Stalkers. And of course, Blink also a little bit delayed here for Zest as well, as it's going to be Stats who has that upgrade finish first.
That could make a big deal of difference here as well, Tasteless. Like, if he goes for a massive Blink Stalker attack right before Zest is done, that's something that's pretty hard to hold on against. And, oh, Stats catches that Oracle. A little bit of a sloppy exit by Zest.
Nicely done there by Stats. Stats getting further and further into a very stable position in this game. Now going to move out. It looks like he should be able to. Is he going to get this Stargate over here? He might actually. Okay.
He knows it's over there somewhere. May as well go look.
He's going to find this, take this out. And that, of course, doesn't just get rid of the Stargate. That gets rid of the proxied pylon, which, of course, gives you the opportunity to do counterattacks into the base. So Stats really seizing control of this game.
He really is, and in fact, he just had a Warp Prism pop out. So with all of these Stalkers in an Immortal and a Warp Prism flying down, that means that he can start to attack with his Blink. Now Zest's Blink is getting very close to done, but he does not have as many units.
Stats is coming up now. Zest on the defense. Similar to game one, the third is exposed, but it's possible that Stats may just focus his attention on the natural of Zest.
A lot of pressure coming up, and expanding behind it is Stats. A great move. He knows that Zest cannot expand while defending against this, but I don't think that Stats is going to be able to get a kill.
Stats is now backing up. A little bit of pressure there on the Warp Prism. He's going to be able to juggle that Immortal back in and micro it further away. The third base, though, was untouched there by Zest, as Stats is taking a third base of his own.
Yeah, Zest with that third base, very good thing that he has that making already. Now, if Stats runs all the way home, he can just immediately send probes there, keep his economy flowing very well, and with both sides going into Glaives, we could see a lot of Adepts in a timing attack, but Stats once again going towards Disruptors as well.
Disruptors, that is the unit that can always cause a comeback in a PvP. If you're going to controlling Disruptors, even if you're stuffed in the corner of a map, you could slowly come out, and if you trade effectively and get those right Disruptor shots off on clumps, you can turn an entire game upside down.
Yeah, they really make everything a little bit crazier in Protoss versus Protoss. We've seen army swings that are just completely out of control. You can hold on and not die for a really long time if you have a few of them as well. Now Zest coming up towards his third base of Stats, starting to shade forward a bit with these Adepts. It looks like he's going for it, Tasteless.
And no, Glaives is about to finish for both parties, but it seems like Zest may initiate first. He's coming up here now, forcing Stats back. Looks like he's faking him out. He's zoned him away. Now he has access to the third base of Stats.
Oh, this could be a really big move here for Zest, but he turns around. He wants to fight here once again. And is that a Disruptor? Yes, that's a Disruptor in there. A great move by Stats. Does get a few Adapts there and a Sentry as well. Zest continuing to fight, but this is a huge army for Stats.
Don't forget, there's no way for Zest to escape here. He has to engage this. He has to try to win this fight. The Disruptor's still in the back, as well as the wounded Immortal. It looks like Zest is in a lot of trouble.
He really is. Stats is just holding on without any problem here. In fact, a bit of mismicro there as well. Stats blinks forward, gets that Prism, and it doesn't look like anything of Zest's army will survive.
That, I think, is going to put Zest in a really nearly impossible position to recover from. He's lost so many units, and the army here for Stats is much more technical. There's a lot more tools at his disposal the next time he gets into a fight. This game is looking very good here for Stats. It seems like Zest is going to rely on counterattack.
Yeah. That's really all that he can do with Stats having a bigger and better army, having those Disruptors mixed in. Zest is just sitting here warping in anything he can to try to get Stats to slow down.
Over here at the top, Zest is going to poke in. He is forcing these probes to run away, but it seems like Stats is going to just move down to the south now. He might try to push in here and wipe out this expansion.
This is a hard to deal with army. How does Zest end up holding on? Those Disruptors will gain a lot of value. He can warp in quite a bit with that Warp Prism as well. In fact, going for that third base, Zest looks like he's just going to give it up, and I don't blame him. There's no way for him to take this on right now.
Yeah, he's already chased out these probes, doing a good amount of damage. He's going to continue to warp in now. These Adepts over here at the top that are doing this harass, that's great. They're taking out this Disruptor, but at the same time, they're not back at home defending, and there's a chance that Stats will kick in the front door and try to take Zest out in just a minute.
You know, he hasn't warped in that many more units over here, so if he does try to do that, maybe Zest can out-micro him or something, having a high ground advantage. But no, Zest going across the map, and Stats retreating with those Disruptors, maybe sensing a giant attack incoming from Zest.
Zest going for the counter. Some of Stats' army still down here at the bottom. They need to get up to the top. Right now, Zest is passing through the middle, and it's going to be up to Stats to try to hold this. If he holds this off, Stats should win this game.
Okay, pushing forward. He has those Adepts. They almost shade on top. In fact, Stats coming from behind with some of these Stalkers. A nice disruption shot does go up. Great pickup there, though, by Zest.
And it looks like this angle is just going to be horrible here for Zest. Getting hit in every which way. Now blinking underneath and denying the warp in. GG!
Wow, another great game by Stats. Utilizing that Disruptor tech to put a slowly teching Zest into an awkward position and getting those very crucial Disruptor shots off to win the game.
And now Stats is only one win away from moving on and escaping this best of 5.
Wow, I mean, this is a big moment for Stats. A top 4 at BlizzCon is a defining moment in a player's career. And to go up against a Terran player in Bjorn, you know, that's a matchup he's very strong at. So maybe he could make it all the way.
We are going to be going into this game momentarily. Zest has been taking some risks, Artosis, and those risks are not always paying off. Will we see him play a more traditional game? We're going to find out, but first we're going to go to a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back here at the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals.
Welcome to BlizzCon!
This is one of the coolest things you're ever going to see in your life.
We cannot wait to share with you guys what we have in store.
Welcome to BlizzCon, boys.
For Azeroth! We're exploring a lot of new locations. We invented some brand new characters.
The world could always use more heroes.
We retake our homeworld.
When we first did BlizzCon back in 2005, we had no idea what to expect.
Are we ready to begin the costume contest?
It is amazing to feel part of this thing.
How'd you guys feel about today? You excited?
It's so much more than a game in a box.
We have so much to show you here today.
It's just all fun and games.
Have fun this weekend. Take care of each other.
Have a great BlizzCon!
The 2016 World Championship Series Global Finals is brought to you by Intel, T-Mobile, NVIDIA, and Republic of Gamers.
Welcome back to BlizzCon 2016 at the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals. We are in a best of 5 with Zest versus Stats. Right now, Zest is in the lead, 2-1.
You know, we've been talking about it, how these guys have been teammates for a long time. Here they are, their lives on the line. And it's interesting to see the mind games they're playing, Tasteless. Zest is trying to cheese out Stats, but it is not working so well so far.
Zest does not want to play an ordinary game against his opponent's Stats. We'll see what he does this time. Anyways, guys, let's make some noise. This is game number 4. Zest versus Stats. Over here in the bottom right, in the blue, he is Zest! His opponent here in the upper left, in the red, he is Stats!
This is kind of a crazy map for these two to play on right now, because this is one of the most rushable maps for Protoss versus Protoss. If you want to go for an early expansion, there are a lot of things your opponent can do to kill you off. So does that favor Zest, who's been opening up so aggressively so far in the match?
We'll see. We'll have to see. You know, it's an odd series so far, because Zest did do 2 proxies in a row, which was, you know, as we were saying earlier, you basically just don't do that. But he tried it. Obviously 2 different proxies, one a DT, one an Oracle Rush. But Zest seems to want to avoid playing a normal game. At least from what we can tell so far.
I don't think he wants to get into the supreme late game of Protoss versus Protoss. Maybe he doesn't feel too hot about his disruptor type of play, and that would be reflected in how he played against Neeb. He was pretty aggressive in that series.
You know, the thing is, if he's really not comfortable and he's in a match like this that's so important, that's fine. He can do whatever the hell he wants, right? He's got to do what it takes to win.
He's a free human, man. It's his choice.
He's an autonomous human being. He can do whatever he wants. But it does seem like he wants to actually avoid a standard game, and I think the fact that this is a best of 5, and we've already had 3 games, and we've seen 2 proxies in 3 of those games, Stats should be pretty wise to this by now. He's probably just going to continue to play safe, play defensive, just stay hyper vigilant, and I think he might be able to win the series.
I do think you're right about that. He's opened up with 2 Stalkers, followed by 2 more, whereas Zest did go for the Adept. So Zest has the potential for damage in the early game. It probably won't happen. People are really good against Adepts nowadays. But the fact that Stats is getting so many Stalkers early on, that means he could get aggressive, or he could just stay very defensive and not lose to anything.
Okay, we have the Nexus going down here for Stats and Zest. There are a lot of popular 2-base pushes on this map. I'm not sure if we're going to see it this time around, but we definitely want to keep our eyes peeled for that.
That is definitely something that could occur. Now, Zest is going directly into a Twilight Council. He scouts that there's a fast Nexus here by Stats, whereas Stats, I don't think he's gotten to scout that from Zest yet.
I think you're right. This Stats now continuing to go down the map and try to chase back anything that Zest is going for here. Robo Bay is now starting here for Stats. Robo Bay is generally just points towards a safer play in most cases, because obviously you can get the observers out, you can start to scout around, try to figure out what your opponent's doing, and then play a reactionary game. Whereas if you see other types of tech, it usually is an indicator of aggression.
Now Zest follows up his Twilight with getting that Blink upgrade once again, really favoring that throughout this whole tournament, really, and into his own robotics. So this is really pretty standard. And just taking a look at where we're at, I would actually give like just a slight advantage to Zest because he did get that Twilight so quickly and gets the jump on that very long Blink upgrade.
Yeah, well, having the Blink upgrade can keep you so safe from any kind of harass that's going to be coming out here. That's going to be very handy. We do have that Observer starting up here. Of course, Stats' Blink shouldn't be too far off as we see the Twilight Council continuing to get close to being finished.
Yeah, and he could, in fact, even go for Glaives again. That is a build that he used a little bit earlier on, tried to do a giant bust onto Zest, and this map might be a little bit easier even for him to do something like that. Let's see what he goes for. Twilight finishes up. He starts an Immortal as well. It's always a very safe move.
And one of the things we want to watch for with Robotech is, do they make the Warp Prism? Because they usually make the Warp Prism as late as possible, and that means it's right before they're going to attack. So if we do see a Warp Prism starting up here, that's usually a good indicator that they are probably going to be aggressive. A full-on attack, or maybe just a harass, but something to get in their opponent's face.
Well, right now, Zest just getting a little bit of recon done here. Stats as well, both utilizing that hallucination and seeing what their opponents are up to. What Zest sees, though, is that there's a Twilight with no upgrades happening for Stats, which is really quite weird.
It is. Yeah, nothing happening over there. Do you think he maybe misplayed there?
Well, he's chrono boosting it, so I would say yes.
Say it's a mistake, yeah.
And that's something that can cost you a game.
This is a pretty big mistake to be making. You know, with this much at stake here, he's going to be kicking himself if he doesn't notice that pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have the Warp Prism for Stats on the way as well.
You really need upgrades on those Warp Gate units, but not getting any quite yet. He is building quite a strong army indeed, so he could go for something like a strong bust still and try to take out, you know, any third bases that are starting, maybe even try to kill the natural, but in the long game, Stats is in a bit of trouble without an upgrade.
All right, we have these Stalkers now pushing forward. Stats definitely in control of his quadrant of the map, now taking a third base. Zest still on 2 bases. We don't see any indicator that he's hungry for a third base just yet.
Yeah, adding quite a few gateways and going up into Disruptor tech. That is going to give him like a huge technology advantage. Having Blink and Disruptors while your opponent is chrono boosting a Twilight that isn't getting anything.
It's so weird. We keep getting shots of it here and there, but yeah, he's still continuing to chrono that. And now this timing attack, he may be able to make it work regardless, but it seems like Zest, or rather Stats, did make a small mistake.
Yeah, he really did. He's coming up now, and this is a strong attack, but with Blink, with some overcharges and a Disruptor on the way.
By the way, Blink just started.
Oh,
he just noticed it. His upgrade was late.
He has to be kicking himself right now. In fact, he turns around. Now, this is the funny part. When he was attacking, that's right around when his Blink would have finished.
Yeah,
if he had actually started it when he wanted. So a big misstep by Stats, but at the end of the day, his Disruptors aren't that far behind, and he's got his third Nexus finish. So he's still in this game.
Yeah, no, it's funny because he is fine, but what he was intending to do, which is to have this big, powerful attack that might smash Zest, he missed that upgrade. He had to go back, regroup. And I got to say, kind of a big blunder there by Stats. You can see that this is really starting to, you know, the tension and how much is at stake here is starting to catch up to him. I mean, this is a bigger stage than he's ever been on in his whole life.
Yeah, that's a mistake. You play 40 games in a day, you probably won't make, to be honest. So it definitely could be a pressure thing, but whatever it is, Stats kind of hoping that Zest can't kill him anytime soon. He does have a much better economy at the moment. Yeah, he's only up 5 probes, but you can see how those extra mineral patches really are helping here. His income is getting way above Zest, which means, you know, Zest is going to have to do some overtime work here with his disruptors.
Yeah, you're completely right. Zest is once again all the way back at home. He dodged the bullet unknowingly by Stats missing that upgrade, but at the same time, now Stats is getting more and more ahead. He still has that, you know, this new base. He's just kind of slowly taking a lead. It seems like overall Stats is a little bit more solid than Zest in a more standard PvP.
Yeah, well, that's kind of Stats' MO anyways. He's just such a strong, solid, normal player, whereas Zest does definitely get a little bit fancy at times, and we've seen that throughout the series so far, some to his detriment, some to his benefit.
Yeah, he's a very crafty player, but sometimes he needs to stop being so technical and go back to the basics because somebody like Stats, you know, is kind of able to deflect almost everything. Let's not forget the game that Zest did win. I mean, that was a super close, super fast proxy DT where he disguised it so well that Stats had no idea it was coming.
Yeah. Now, this game is kind of slowing down a little bit, as I think everyone can notice. No one is attacking each other. They're kind of flying around, seeing what each other is up to. And that's because they've gotten into this position where killing each other becomes extremely hard. They're both getting observer speed to spot where disruptors are. They both are going double robotics disruptors. They both have a lot of blink stalkers. And at this point, even if you have a small lead, it generally doesn't translate into really anything because of how powerful the disruptor is.
That's right. It's pretty tough to attack and come out with some kind of lead. Of course, as you were saying, because the disruptor is so strong, it can keep you zoned back for a very long time. So a lot of times in games like this, we'll see the players start to try to attack each other in different locations, try to draw the player's screen to one area of the map, and then hit them in another location.
Now, both of them are splitting up their armies a little bit. Oh, a nice disruptor shot there by Zest, getting a couple units there. In fact, 2 disruptors going down for Stats. That's exactly what you want to see. But both of them taking their 4th bases, poking both sides of the map. And once again, you kind of notice that they both poke and then back off. They're like, oh, are you weak here? You're not weak here? Okay, I'll go away.
Now, due to the way this map is shaped, this could be cut in half very quickly. And I think that's going to be the point in time where we're going to find out who's got better multitasking, who's got better harass, and who's able to handle the opposing player, setting that at him. Because, you know, obviously the more bases you have, the more locations you have to defend. And that's really where blinking in and out and using these disruptor balls to come in and do damage is so effective.
And you know what? That is somewhere where Zest normally is above pretty much everyone in the world. His multitasking is fantastic. He can do little attacks everywhere on the map at once. And we notice that they're both getting the charge upgrade, which is exactly for that. So will Zest's normal strengths pay off here, or will Stats just solid play, getting him a little bit ahead over time with better economy and better macro? Is that going to pay off?
We'll have to wait and see. That's the big question. We see that Zealot Legs is almost done, and we have the Dark Shrine now coming in here for Stats. Now, I know we saw a Dark Shrine in game number 2, and it was very quick, and it did manage to win the game, but generally speaking, it's for the late game. But hold up here. We have some Stalkers blinking in. Stats takes out those 2 Disruptors. He may have Stats' army pinned up here, but do note the supply difference. It does seem that overall Stats should have a bigger army.
Oh, he blinks forward right now, tries to take down his opponent's disruptors, and in fact he does. With these 2 Immortals cleaning house right now for Zest, he will easily punch through the rest of these Blink Stalkers, and that is the first really big moment of this game, going advantage towards Zest.
Beautiful play there by Zest, actually gunning that down. And now moving out, he's got very good control of the upper right location of the map, but we do see Stats' army also moving in here. He may be trying to pick a fight with Zest.
Well, it looks like he's angry about what just happened there. Some charge zealots coming in for Zest. He saws 5 5 Immortals. That is a huge amount, and in fact, Zest gets that first shot off and kills a Disruptor.
I think Stats has to back up. Zest has very good control here, sending another army down here through the center of the map, and this is what we were talking about in this matchup, in this current iteration of StarCraft 2. A lot of the late game is about counterattacks and hitting in different angles because there's so much technical mobility here between Adepts, Stalkers, and Disruptors. It's crazy.
It truly is. Now, Zest hitting with the technical part of his army up towards the north, but sending a little harassment squad in here, and in fact has some Disruptors along with his Immortals, so definitely can get a lot of damage done, but back here, Stats is pressing forward.
Stats continuing to move over here, but a lot of damage done up here. All the workers now having to retreat. Meanwhile, Stats is trying to come in here for the kill move by attacking at the core of Zest's base.
A lot of charge zealots coming in from the side, trying to deal with these Immortals and doing a good job of it, but Zest has very few units left over at the moment. He is definitely in a lot of trouble. 2 Disruptors still with Stats' army.
It does not look like the army here of Zest over at the north is going to be enough to do any fatal damage to the base of Stats. Meanwhile, Stats down here seems to be holding his own. The Colossus comes out trying to gun that down. Meanwhile, great Disruptor balls there from Zest.
Yeah, this flank right now helping him out immensely, but still a scary set of units here from Stats. He's going to be able to pick off these Disruptors. Some great kills going down. In fact, the random Colossus falls as well.
Very nicely done. He manages to hold that base. Overall supply for Stats, it's 111. Zest, it's about 91. So they both took some serious blows, lost big chunks of their army, and they're going to have to build it back up.
Yeah, and this is getting really weird as well with how much damage they just dealt to each other. They're making some very funny unit choices here. A lot of Archons coming out of Zest, trying to get rid of his gas bank, still staying on Disruptors. But Stats has decided to switch into Immortals here.
Going for Immortals is interesting.
Yeah. Wasn't expecting that one.
Yeah, I'm a little bit curious about that because we see, Zest with the Zealot Archon, and Immortals are just not really going to, do much.
No, certainly. I think it's once you wipe armies in Protoss versus Protoss in a situation like this, a lot of times you just go for Blink Stalkers, right? Because they just dodge all the Disruptor hits. You can stay very active with them. That might be a nod towards that, and Stats trying to counter what Zest is likely to do.
I think that is a good point. Sometimes they do just make a bunch of Blink Stalkers and start trying to hit everywhere. That's probably the more impulsive play, but it seems like in reality, Zest has much more patience and is actually going to try to go for a very cost-effective army. And I want to emphasize that for you guys. Zealot Archon is so insanely cost-effective. You're always going to have more minerals than you have gas in this game. So spend it all on Zealots, spend all of the gas on Templars to make Archons, and you've got a pretty scary army coming out once you've
Zealots and Archons go together like peas and carrots. Yeah. Seriously, they are quite a team. Some harassment coming down from Stats. Zest pulls those probes quite quickly indeed. Look at all those Archons. Is this a Protoss versus Zerg or a Protoss versus Protoss?
Right? Well, he's going to come up here to the top. Now, the supplies are still fairly even, but I don't know if the army of Stats is going to be in the best position. This expansion at the north is somewhat naked right now. Zest coming in, and he has Disruptors in a good position.
He's hit those for so long. Huge hits coming down from Zest. Another one tries to get out, going towards the Immortals, but it gets picked off, and now it just comes down to this massive amount of Archons trying to push back Stats. Stats' army being pushed back so powerfully by Zest.
Unbelievable play there by Zest. This expansion should go down. I don't see how Stats is ever going to be able to recover from this. Another great Disruptor shot, and that's it. GG.
Zest with a small fist pump there. So happy with his victory. Definitely a very close game once again, but he ekes it out and brings us to our first Game 5 of the day.
Fantastic series so far. Zest showing us that he, in fact, can play toe-to-toe with a player like Stats, who's been so perfect, especially in the late game. I gotta say though, that was a little bit odd that we saw those Immortals get made back there as Zest was pumping out Zealots and Archons. I mean, although that Disruptor positioning was so good, it was also the fact that, he was completely zoned out. All right, guys, let's make some noise. We are about to go into this game. Zest versus Stats, the final game.
Oh man, finally a game 5. I have been waiting for this one all day long. These two so evenly matched in Protoss versus Protoss. Whoever wins here, definitely one of the favorites to take down this tournament.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic PvP so far. Do you think either player will be proxying here so far?
Well, I would say, here's the tricky part, right? We're going to Dasan Station, and even if you build things in your main base, I consider that a proxy here. Because you're just so close to your opponent. So, I mean, will they put something elsewhere other than in their bases? I would guess no on that one.
Well, let's see what happens. We are almost ready to get into this game. I gotta say, I think you're completely right, Artosis. Either of these two could make it all the way to the finals and win the whole thing. Of course, Stats, somebody who's really been coming into his own over the last year that we've had here. He's really found his footing and is starting to have a lot of success in StarCraft 2. Now, Zest is somebody who's quite the veteran. He's won multiple tournaments and had a lot of success, and this is probably a little bit more comfortable for him, whereas Stats has never really played with stakes this high.
Zest wins at least one big tournament a year, whereas Stats just doesn't have any giant trophies sitting at his house. So, you know, there is a lot of pressure on him, but this is it, Aces. We are going into game number 5.
All right, guys, let's get hype. Let's make some noise. This is game number 5, Stats versus Zest at the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals. Over here in the upper left, in the blue, he is Zest! And his opponent here in the bottom right in the red, he is Stats!
This map, Dasan Station.
This map, Artie.
This is going to be the map that these two have the least experience on. It gets vetoed a lot in tournaments. It's just such a wild, crazy map with the way that it's shaped. So we could really see anything here.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have maps like this because it does allow for some very interesting games. And actually, I think overall in the game of StarCraft helps us understand the game even further. When you see how different races and different matchups operate on very strange maps, the way they're set up, you could definitely even take that knowledge and go back to a more traditional map and see it in a totally different way.
Yeah, it really is so true. Like, you have to be a little bit creative, play a little bit outside of the box, which means inventing new things, which anyone can really learn from watching that. But how much experience do these two have here? How can they be creative? What are they going to do to get the leg up?
Yeah, we're going to have to find out. Now, in this map, you are in very close proximity to your opponent. So rushes are very scary. There's also multiple points of entry into your opponent's base. And even the initial expansions, it's a little bit odd.
Well, both of them opening up with Stalkers. Kind of the defensive play there. Adepts, I mean, you normally don't really get damage with Adepts anymore, in the early game at least. Protosses have become very good at blocking that, so not surprised to see both of them open up with Stalkers here, because they know anything could be coming.
Yeah, and of course, very close by air are they to each other, so he's going to send the Mothership Core down here, but Stats' Stalker's already in position. It's pretty predictable, the angle it's going to come in, so he goes ahead and zones that Mothership Core back out.
Okay, a robotics goes up for Zest. His life on the line. Of course, both of them, whoever wins this, goes on to that round of 4, and he chooses what is normally considered a very safe tech route into robotics, whereas Stats, he's going to expand to the gold right away.
That's right. Well, now both of them taking this gold like this. Remember, guys, obviously the gold minerals, you just get a lot more income from those. So that also can change the makeup of the Protoss army here. You have to figure out where you're going to spend that extra minerals and what kind of army you want. So sometimes if you do get the gold base, you don't necessarily want the most gas-intensive army.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to have it be much more basic and meaty and beefy instead of being so technical and tactical.
Yeah, we really don't have gold geysers here, so something like going for mass adepts could be a very smart play. Instead, Zest going directly into disruptor-based tech.
Very interesting. We also see that the Warp Prism is coming out right now here for Zest, so that's usually an indicator that he wants to send that out pretty quickly. He may wait for 1 or 2 disruptors and put that in there first, but he does want to get in here with some harass and try to take out possibly some workers or some of the opposing army units.
Okay, Zest poking, he's got to be careful. Those 2 sentries could ruin his day if they get too close, but he sees them and backs up. No way for him to do any damage to stats at the moment. I'm very interested to see, though, is he going to go for a disruptor drop? Is he just going to go with that Warp Prism and harass the gold minerals? And in fact, it looks like a Speed Prism upgrade as well as disruptors. So definitely going to be putting on a lot of harassment.
And this could be pretty handy. You can definitely hit your opponent's base from like 360 degrees. You know, the bases, unlike most maps, are kind of propped right in the middle. Which means it's very difficult for the opposing player to keep his eye on every corner of that mini-map to see where the blip might come in, where you're going to see that Warp Prism hit you, which means that if you outmaneuver your opponent or you surprise them, you're going to do a ton of damage.
Yeah, this is a little bit scary for stats, to be honest, with these gateways coming up and disruptors already popping out. That blink upgrade is a long ways off. And again, the travel time on this map is not very long at all.
The Stalkers now over here with some more adepts coming in. By the way, both these guys on 2 bases that are on the gold base. And here comes that Warp Prism harass. How much damage is he going to do?
Oh my
Here
God.
we go.
Okay, well, you know what? 4 probes plus lost mining time on a gold base. That's already successful harassment from Zest.
Yeah, that's right. Very nicely done. And you can now see the benefits of that coming in here for Zest. It looks like he might try to come around from a different angle. And see, this is the beauty of it. Because you're in the middle of the map to some extent, you can hit from all these different angles. Now, Stats thinks that this harass is actually somewhere behind, but in fact, it looks like Zest is gearing up to possibly do a huge attack here at the front base of Stats.
Really quick reactions there by Stats, getting out of the way, utilizing that barrier. But Zest now with 2 disruptors trying to push forward. He has a lot of beef in the front here with these adepts. The overcharge is going off, but Zest has decided he wants to kill.
Oh, beautiful connection there. Stats now trying to defend as best he can. He's lost the pylons here, but he may have more Stalkers and Immortals. We need to see another warping come in here. Will the Stalkers be able to gun down the Warp Prism in time?
Uh-oh, they're trying to, and in fact, the Disruptor doesn't make it out. Zest in a lot of trouble from that. He really needed it to get out, and now with Blink and 2 Immortals, Stats in a dominating position can easily counterattack.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Stats may try to go for the counterattack here. He may just want to regroup. He has to take out these remaining adepts, but I don't believe there's going to be enough to defend. There's not going to be enough tools at the disposal here for Zest to survive this attack coming right now here from Stats.
You're definitely right about that, Tasteless. These unupgraded adepts are not going to last very long against the Blink Stalkers and against the Immortals. Stats marching towards victory right now. He wants this the round of 4. He can feel it.
He's coming in now. Zest is desperately trying to warp in. I don't believe he's going to have enough. The probes have been pulled. The mothership core goes down. GG!
Stats with a really impressive victory over former teammate Zest. A great day in his career, shedding that, that Zest's shadow, basically, right? He's always been behind, but here he is going into that round of 4 where he will face the GSL champion Bjorn.
Brilliant play here by Stats, but it was a close series. Zest did a phenomenal job back there, but that last attack, it wasn't enough. He didn't control quickly and adeptly when it started, and of course in a close proximity like that on a map like that. I mean, that's really just very tough to handle.
Yeah, you know what? It started going Zest's way very strongly, but Stats had Blink finish up and was able to punch back through. Great play from Stats. Well-deserved victory.
We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll see some more StarCraft 2 action here at the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals.
The reviews are in, and the critics agree. Overwatch is a perfect 10.
What are you looking at?
It's time to pick a side.
Overwatch. Play it now on PC and console.
Our last quarterfinal match of the day was a very close 3-2 series with Zest coming out over Zest. So first of all, congratulations. I can tell that this win means so much to you, especially with the win over a teammate that you've known for so long, a teammate that has been revered as one of the best
One,
Protoss
two,
players
three,
in the
four,
world.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Help me feel that it must mean that much more to you. 일단 우승한 이긴 거 축하드리고요. 이제 주승호 선수가 일단 엄청 잘하는 토스 선수이기도 하고 팀원이잖아요. 그래서 그만큼 더 의미가 있을 것 같은데 기분 얘기해 주세요.
일단 8강에서 성욱이랑 만나게 됐을 때 이거 진짜 정말 8강에서 떨어질 수도 있겠구나. 되게 좀 경기 걱정을 굉장히 또 많이 하면서 좀 만나면은 좀 더 높은 4강이나 결승에서 만나고 싶었었는데 이렇게 8강에서 만나게 돼서 좀 되게 또 유감이었고 네 그랬습니다.
So he says, first of all, when I found out that I would be playing my teammate Zest in the quarterfinals, I thought, wow, I really wish I wouldn't have played him so soon. Then I thought I would be able, possibly even drop out because he is such a formidable opponent. I really wish I would have been able to play him later on in the tournament, maybe the semifinals, even grand finals. So I just thought, yeah, it was just an unfortunate draw of the bracket. But when it came to this series, you still showed impressive play. Because he's a teammate that you've known for so long, was it harder to prepare for this tournament or perhaps easier? 일단 그 팀원을 가장 오랜 생활해왔잖아요. 그래서 그렇기 때문에 약간 준비하는데 더 편했는지 아니면 더 어려웠어요?
준비하는 데는 생각보다 좀 어려웠던 것 같아요. 이번에 준비할 때는. 그리고 막상 경기에서 이렇게 성우기하고 이렇게 해보니까 제가 생각했었던 이런 플레이와는 좀 다른 플레이를 성우기가 이렇게 하더라고요. 그래가지고 경기 도중에 조금 머릿속으로 생각을 많이 했었던 것 같아요.
So he says, definitely when it came to preparation, it was not easy. I found it quite difficult. And even as I played him on stage here, I actually felt that Zest was showing a different style of play than I expected. So I actually had to do a lot of thinking as I played through those matches to try to come out with this win. And now I'm wondering, when the score is 2-2 and there's so much on the line, how were you able to keep calm and what were you thinking as you headed into that final match? 일단 스코어가 이제 2대2 됐을 때 마인드 컨트롤을 잘 해야 되는데 그 순간에 무슨 생각을 하면서 다섯 번째 경기 들어가셨나요?
지나간 경기들은 다 잊자라는 생각으로 다섯 번째 경기를 준비를 했고요. 그 덕분인지는 모르겠지만은 다행히도 이길 수 있었던 것 같습니다.
So right before that fifth match, I just told myself, let's forget about every match that I've played up until this point. It's a fresh slate. And I'm not sure if that's why I won or not, but I'm actually really relieved because obviously I was able to win that final match. And of course, your next opponent in the semifinal is a very strong opponent. It is Byeon. And Byeon said that when he faced the opponent, whether it was you or Zest, he felt comfortable that he could show that he could beat the best Protoss in the world. So what do you have to say to that? 이제 변윤우 선수 아까 인터뷰했을 때 주승호 선수 아니면 김대현 선수 누구든 만나든 가장 잘하는 토스 선수 이길 자신 있다 이렇게 대답하셨어요. 그래서 대답해 주세요.
사실 변현우 선수한테 이번 공허의 유산에서 좀 많이 패배를 했었어요. 그래가지고 변 선수가 좀 저도 사실 두렵기는 한데 오늘 이 블리즈컨에서 제가 그 것들을 다 깨부수겠습니다.
So he says, in Legacy of the Void, I've actually played Byeon a lot. And I'm going to be honest here, I've lost a lot of those times. So he's not an opponent I'm happy to face. I don't want to face him. But that being said, this is the bracket. I will be facing him. So because this is the WCS Global Finals, I will try to break that losing streak and show that I can move on. So congratulations again. And with that, it will be Stats that is our fourth and final player in our semifinals.
Thank you very much, Smix. Congratulations to Stats. Joined back on the couch now for one final time. We've now finished all the quarterfinal games, joined by In Control, Nathanius, and Rotterdam. Well, Kev, I know you've got a lot to say about this series. It is Stats going through over Zest. These boys did highlight Zest a little bit more than yourself. You picked out Stats, and he was the one to go through.
Yeah, what a moment for him. I think it's a very, very big moment in his career. Finally, in a mainstream big tournament, makes it to the semifinals, you know, on an international stage as well. And I think he deserved it, man. I really think he looked like the better and more solid Protoss in this series. I must say, the first game, you know, the way that Zest was defending against Stats' aggression, I was like, wow, that's actually really good, you know, the way he kept defensive shading. But throughout the series, it just really felt that Zest was only going to win if he could truly catch Stats off guard. And if everything went smooth and everything went normal, it felt that Stats was the overall slightly better player in this matchup, other than that strange moment with the 19 Stalkers in the right top side on Frozen Temple. But, you know, this first game, it really felt that Zest was in an all right position, but then Zest was just so eager to finish it. He just ran across the map, and I gotta say, phenomenal hold by Stats. Obviously, it turned into this weird, somehow sort of base trade in the end, but that didn't really matter because it was over at that point. So really, really good hold, and I really felt he deserved the victory, man. I think he just played slightly better in this matchup.
Gentlemen, anything to add? I mean, we're still here in map number 1 at the moment.
Well, I think this highlights some of the interesting things that we've seen in New Gettysburg in general, because that island makes things very weird. I think a lot of people realize today that you can drop through and pick up through those walls around there, but these scenarios just really show the skill in being able to hold it together. And then things got really crazy with the aggressiveness that we saw brought out. And you were telling me earlier, it really seemed like didn't really want to play too much towards that late game in PvP.
I must say I was kind of surprised by the leave here. I understand that this is terrible, but I love the SimCity. Yes, the Void Ray is not going to do anything against Dark Templars, but he had a decent SimCity setup, and he had an Oracle. I know it was low in energy, but I still felt it was a relatively early leave. What do you think, Jeff?
I mean, on this stage, I think you do stay in there just because weird things can happen. And maybe the Oracle finds a naked mineral line after, you know, defending, and yeah, he loses a lot of mining time, loses 6 or 7 probes. So, long story short, I agree with you. But he was just kind of like, okay, I'm behind against an equally skilled opponent, get out of there. And then we got into this game here, which got pretty weird. Like, Zest actually in this series loses, by the way, kind of off of his own aggression, which is kind of a weird thing. Almost in each game that he lost, it was off of his own failed attack. And we can kind of see that here, where it's like a pretty decent position, but yet again, he's the guy that doesn't have disruptors, and that's going to be a theme throughout this best of 5. The disruptors didn't usually hit that, like, oh no, 25 supply goes down in 1 shot, but making you move backwards while taking damage, making you spread out your units, making you lose 3 or 4 guys, and then having to focus on a disruptor that then just gets picked up in a warp prism constantly was the edge in favor of Stats.
I think for the people at home, Frozen Temple was probably the most fun game, but it had a lot of weird moments as well. I'm not talking about the random Colossus that showed up, even though shout out to him, that was really cool. But a bunch of Stalkers just died on the right top side of the map, which were just stuck there, and then at the same time, Zest makes kind of an awkward counterattack, and he didn't pay attention, lost some of his own disruptors, and it almost felt like he ended up losing the game. In the end, he did secure victory with those 2 massive shots at the end of the game. But even this game that Zest won with disruptors, it felt like if that happens again, you know, if they play this game one more time, I'm not sure if we're going to see the same result. And I must say, though, this was a phenomenal hold by Stats, because playing against, you know, such a weird build on a weird map, which is Dasson, 1 or 2 shots, Jeff, you can make the sound better than anyone. And it's all over. Like, if that connects with 4 or 5 Stalkers, then it can be over. But he kept calm, stayed composed, relied on Photon Overcharge, and then when he saw 1 disruptor shot, he didn't think, he didn't second guess himself once. He's like, all right, 1 shot, I'm blinking forward, I'm getting the second one, and if you want to pick it up, I'm getting the prism, and that secured victory for him. That was really cool. He was super decisive on the most important clutch moment of this series.
I do want to amend. I was like, he was constantly on the wrong side of disruptors, and then we show a game where he wins off 2 disruptor shots, and then wins the next game, or lose the next game with having disruptors. So, never mind.
The difference in style between the European-American Protoss versus Protoss and the Korean, it feels very different. It feels a lot more, the European and North American scene feels a lot more disruptor-heavy, a lot more defensive, where this was very aggressive and very wild all over.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we predicted in the beginning of the series, right? We're going to see a lot of variety in the opening. It's not we both open up with 2 adepts, we check each other, and then it's Blink Stalker Disruptor. No, it's going to be crazy. We saw Proxy Stargates, we see War Prism Speed, 2 base all in, we saw quick dark shrine. Like, yeah, they're all about the element of surprise and obviously micro-oriented timing attacks, while European PvP is more like, I have faith in you defending these attacks, so let's just both play Blinkstalker Disruptor. It's kind of weird, but, you know, whatever works.
Well, it's the last remaining products to go through now to the next stage. We'll see how well he'll do. But let's check in with the bracket now, as we have completed the quarterfinals, with leaving us with, obviously, the semifinals. 4 players left in the tournament coming up tomorrow, as we have finished our action for the WCS Global Finals today. There is still more StarCraft to come. We'll talk about that in a couple of moments. But a Laser versus Dark is the first semifinal coming up tomorrow, before Beyond versus Stats. Gentlemen, thoughts when looking at the bracket?
Okay, well, all 4 of those guys have already won $30,000. The winner, at worst, is going to get $100,000. So, if you're selling like life insurance and you're in the audience, or if you're a car salesperson, find those 4 guys. This is the time. They are rich.
And the money's only going to keep on increasing. Of course, we get to sickening levels tomorrow.
No, like you said, $30,000, that's amazing. That's basically first place in most of the other tournaments. Making it to the final, $100,000. I mean,
$70,000.
Yeah, that's $70,000. That's basically like, you know, and this is not disrespectful at all, but like that's Elazer's career earnings up to this point. And that's already a lot of money. Tomorrow it comes down to 1 best of 5 ZVZ. It's obviously going to be sick. I do think that we are going to see nerfs. Like, even though all 4 of them have experience playing big series, but they don't play 70,000 series best of 5s every now and then.
That's like, hey guys, want to play for dinner? Want to play a game for dinner or a drink? $70,000 worth of dinner and drinks is unbelievable.
That's like a Mike Morheim, Gabe, and Czech roulette type levels. Insane.
But
that was a delicious puma we just
perhaps the unlikely, when looking back a little bit, maybe let's look back 6 months, let's look back 12 months, even just look back last week when we started with the opening week. He is the last remaining non-Korean in the finals.
And the least likely, let's say that. Of all the non-Koreans, nobody was talking about a Laser being here. Well, him and Petit Drogo, I guess, but it was all Snoot, it was all Neeblit, Showtime was gaining our trust. And yet it's a Laser who's facing off against another Zerg in Dark, which is going to be, again, on paper, you got to be like, guys, okay, come on, but it's 70-30, 80-20 Dark, right? I don't know. Laser took down Solar, and Solar won his GSL over the top of Dark, actually. So by the transitive properties, Laser is the best Zerg on planet Earth.
I think that's one of the coolest things that we're going to be looking at going into tomorrow. Just the fact that a Laser coming in, basically like the dark horse of this top 16. Considering that Drogo comes in as the replacement, like, you just don't expect a Laser to be the foreigner that, like, as you said, that we were talking about. Showtime came in super hot. Would have been my pick for today. Obviously, a lot of people really had a lot of hopes for Neeb after his Casper Cup performance. So
it was SSL, wasn't it?
Big kudos to a Laser for even making it this far.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Been very useful and helpful today on the couch to carry us through the analysis pre and post game. One last thing, though, before we do go, do remember to check us out on social media. It is at WCS, or at StarCraft, should I say, hashtag WCS 2016 /StarCraft on YouTube as well. If you like the WCS Signature Series, you can find them all there.
But we're not
StarCraft is not done yet, though. We have Shoutcraft Kings coming up shortly with Total Biscuit. These guys are excited about it. I hope you are as well. Total Biscuit is going to be running some awesome StarCraft 2 action on this main stage. You don't want to go anywhere.